Hey everybody, welcome back to koha-US's terrific every other Thursday video. I'm George Williams. I am the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System, and we're going to talk about deleting expired patrons today. With me, as always, is
Christopher Brandon. I thought you were going to forget me for a moment there.
No.
I'm Christopher Brandon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network, and it's nice to be not forgotten. So yes, we're going to be talking about deleting patrons, and that's going to fold into a much bigger topic that we'll get into. Yeah, let's get started here.
Yeah, I'm going to let Christopher start first because his process for deleting expired patrons is way easier than mine.
All right.
This video is sponsored by koha-US, your place to look for all things Koha. Whether you're just starting out with Koha or you've been with Koha for a while, koha-US is a great place to find resources, learn new tips and techniques, or connect with other users and libraries. Koha-US provides excellent information, both original and curated from around the internet, including the terrific every other day training videos. You will also find several special interest groups to connect with, as well as our general monthly meeting where we gather to talk about the latest Koha news. You should also check out the koha-US annual conference, held at various locations around the US. This is a great opportunity to meet with other users face-to-face, and build your Koha network, as well as new friendships. And of course, don't forget about the great presentations. Koha-US is also actively involved in the Koha community by contributing towards new developments. If you are interested in contributing towards Koha-US funded developments, join the Koha-US membership. Your annual membership builds the funds to sponsor new developments in the community, and as a member, you also help shape Koha-US with your membership votes, and receive a discount on the annual conference. You can also contribute towards developments through a direct donation, or by purchasing some great koha-US merchandise through our Threadless account. Visit us at koha-us.org to find out more.
Okay, so a while back, our libraries had decided that, okay, we need to maintain our deleted, or not our deleted, our patrons that are inactive, more so the expired patrons. Keep in mind that there are very different facets of statuses of patrons. You can have your inactive patrons, but they're not expired, and then you have your expired patrons. And our consortium expires patrons every 2 years. That's what we had agreed upon. But then we had this buildup of expired patrons that either deceased or just fell off the grid or whatever, and they've been expired for years, and we're saying, why are we holding on to this? We want to make sure our data is not just bloating servers in storage.
Right.
And so we made the conscious decision to do away with this. This came on my radar because I was realizing, okay, I'm doing stats and for our library. And, one of the stats that we have is how many people that we have in our tax bracket. And, that's just a number that just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. And I was thinking, that's not very accurate.
Yeah.
Because, we're just, we're not purging these patrons at any point. So, we don't have, it's not a very useful piece of data. And so I told the consortium, we need to keep this cleaned up, and they were hesitant about it. But we had this discussion, and we decided, okay, well, we will sign off on you deleting these patrons, but let's, they expire every 2 years. Let's go, keep in line with that, and if they've been expired for 2 years, then go ahead and delete them. So essentially, a patron's record can exist for up to 4 years in our system. So initially, when we did this, it was a huge purge because we hadn't cleaned up in all the time that we had been on Koha. So So it was quite a shock to the consortium when those numbers just suddenly dove.
Right.
But now that we're doing that on a consistent basis, we're seeing those numbers fluctuate, which gives us more of an accurate live picture of, what is our enrollment, rather than, this ever growing number that never shrinks.
Right. How many people use your library regularly and have cards versus how many people have ever had a card?
Yes. So
yeah.
With that said, our process is fairly straightforward and simple. I use the tool under tools. I use the batch patron deletion and anonymization tool, which is quite flexible. You can go through all libraries or a specific library. Those patrons have to meet this criteria, so they basically can't have any critical ties to them. They can't have anything checked out. They can't have a balance on their account. They can't be a guarantor to another patron. They're not a staff member, and they don't have permissions tied to them. That one is kind of, I don't know. I mean, if they're expired and they have permissions, it's like,
I would want to get rid of them if they're expired and they have permissions. Yeah.
So that one's a little iffy to me, but these are the qualifications in order to be deleted, and you have to verify that you are deleting, and then you have to say, what do I want to base this deletion on? So you're going to delete patrons that meet the following criteria, and you can use multiple ones. They have not borrowed since a certain date, which, surprise, you're gone. You didn't borrow anything. I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't do that on our patrons. The one we use is the expiration date. So we backdate this 2 years. If they've been expired for more than 2 years, then they qualify to be deleted. Who have not connected since a certain date, and that has its own set of caveats, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Or you can say whose patron category is, and we just leave it at any, but you can isolate it to a specific category.
Right.
You can also anonymize history. Ours is automated, so I just don't touch this particular part of the tool.
I don't use that either.
Depending, and this is my test server, and I ran this, and it took a while for this to generate any results. Depending on how often you clean up, it can be longer or shorter. When we initially did it, it took quite a while for it to go through all the patrons, because there was quite a bit of patrons that qualified at the time because we hadn't purged before. But if you do it more often, it takes less time. I mean, you can do it once a year, you can do it once a month, or you can do it daily. As long as you're using the same criteria, how often you do it, the only variable in how often you do it is, how long it takes to run. If I'm going back 2 years from today for my expiration date, then the criteria remains the same. It's just less number of patrons I have to do in that session, the more often that I do it. When I ran this, when you run it, it doesn't just do it. It gives you a confirmation, and here's where it stands. This is against our test server. So there's quite a few.
That's a lot,
patrons in there, on a monthly basis, we can have maybe 1,000, 800 to 1,000 patrons that have sat there, and that's a lot of records. And
what are the options here?
In the options, you can permanently delete these patrons. You can move them to the trash, which is a separate table, or you can just do a test run. I don't know what the test run.
The test run just gives you a count how many will be deleted in the batch.
Which, isn't that what this is? It's like,
I think it might also tell you if there are any problems. Like, I think it'll give you a report back of which patrons can't be deleted. Because they've got fees or whatever.
Or maybe it, and I've never done the test run. Maybe it shows you a list of the patrons, so you can say,
I did it once.
This shouldn't have been in there. kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I did it once, and I think it just gives you a report back of which ones can't be deleted. It's been a while since I've done that, so
I would find it more useful because, I mean, technically, I would expect this count to be that. I would find it more useful if the test running, and I'm not going to do it now.
right.
I would find it more useful if the test run actually gave me useful data other than, well, you have 5 patrons that don't work. Well, why did you give me those in the first place then? Kind of thing. It's like the test run should give me like, okay, what patrons are being deleted or would have been deleted, so that I can look through that and see if there's anything that stands out as odd.
Like I said, it's been a long time since I did it, so I don't remember exactly what it does.
But anyways, we're deleting patrons that have had their records have existed for 4 years. They've been expired for 2 years. I have no reason, as long as they're, not meeting any of the criteria that was on that first page, they're good to go. And so I just permanently delete them. It's been 2 years that they've been expired. They haven't balked about it. And so it's like, it's a good thing to just get rid of them. So there's no reason to hold on to it in the trash. I say that because, and we'll talk about this, putting things in the trash does not make a ton of sense. I mean, yes, I can go back and do a report on it, but I can't do anything useful like undeleting a patron. If I want that data restored, I have to go back to my vendor and have them restore it, which they don't want to do in the first place. When you've deleted a patron, you've
broken all the links to
you
all
broke
of
all
their
the links, and we'll talk about that. But anyways, that is my process. And once we got over the initial shock of starting this process, our libraries have gotten used to it. And once in a while we'll have a patron come up and say, we had an account years ago. I don't know if we're still in there, and we can look and say, nope, it's been for a couple of years since you've expired, so we'll start over fresh.
Yeah.
So that's our process.
So my process, hesitation was a word you said. My process was built to satisfy the libraries that had severe hesitation about deleting patrons. It wasn't here in Kansas, but in Idaho, we deleted patrons for the simple reason that when I was at Latah County Library, we were doing a strategic plan. And part of the strategic plan, they had this information about all the communities. And one of our communities had a population of 300. And the number of people in that community that had library cards was like 740. I mean, it was completely not possible. There weren't 740 people living in that zip code. And it's for the same reason you talked about, is that, cards were created and they just sat in the system until eventually somebody went through and deleted them. I was the person at that job that deleted them, and we did that on a library by library basis, not consortium wide. So when I, started here in Kansas, the first time I did a patron batch deletion, I think there were over 10,000 because it had been like 10 years since it had been done. But I went to one of our user group meetings, and I said, this is something we ought to do, because, you talked about statistics. One of the things that every library in the United States does is every year you fill out a survey, usually for your state library, but that survey is really driven by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, department of the federal government here in the United States. And one of the things they ask for is a patron count. And they always say in little tiny letters underneath the spot that says, where they say patron count, they say they want the patrons that have been actively using your library in the last 3 years. And so when I pointed this out to our user group and said, we've got a lot of patrons that it's just bloat in the system, And this is what the IMLS really wants out of this survey. And so I asked them for advice on what they wanted out of a process system-wide to delete expired patrons. And so one of the things they wanted is they wanted a report, how many people are being deleted, library by library. They didn't want anybody deleted that had fines, which the tool doesn't do that. So if they owe any money, if their account balance is not zero, they can't be deleted. If they have anything checked out, if they're expired and they have things checked out, there's something wrong with your library. But they didn't want anybody with things checked out. You can't delete people that have holds, and you can't delete people if they have somebody else linked to their account, like in a guarantor guarantee relationship. And again, you can't do somebody with permissions. And so I said, okay, we can do that. But then they wanted reports. They wanted to know who's going to be deleted. They wanted some kind of report that they could run that would say, these are the people who are going to be deleted. And some of them wanted to know a year beforehand who is on the chopping block, which accounts are going to be deleted within the next year. And some of them just wanted to know who's going to be deleted like within the next month. And so I had to come up with some different strategies for writing reports. And then eventually what we developed is a policy that says twice a year, at least twice a year, we will delete patrons that their accounts have been expired for more than 3 years. And I figured that setting the policy so that we would do it twice a year gives me the ability to do it 12 times a year, which is what I try to do as monthly. But I have all of these processes in place I have a bunch of reports. This is all driven by reports. This first report shows me all the people who could conceivably be deleted immediately. So they don't have any fees, they don't have any items checked out, they don't have any guarantees, they don't have any requests. These are all the people that meet those criteria, that their account's been expired for more than 2 years, and they don't already have a patron extended attribute on their account that says they're expired.
It's
So
amazing they enrolled before computers were even around. It's
when did they enroll? Yeah, they enrolled in 1900. This is my batch of test patrons. So what I do is I run this about once a week, and then I batch modify all of these people. And I come down and I change the patron attribute. I've got it, it's called account expired. And I change that to patron expired for more than 2 years, scheduled for deletion.
wow.
And then what that gives my library staff the ability to do is, once that's set, they can go in and run this report and say, show me all the people that have that attribute on their account.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way they can run those reports and see who it is that's going to be deleted within the next year or so.
Hmm.
And a couple of the libraries, they actually run this report and they phone these people and say, your account's going to be expired if you don't come in, and they get those people to come in. Sounds like a lot of work to me.
Their account's going to be expired, or it's going to be deleted.
Yeah, it's going to be deleted. Yeah, their account's going to be deleted within the year. So that's the first step. The second step is it runs the exact same report, but I gave all these patrons, I put a request on all these patrons' account, but these are the patrons whose accounts have been expired for more than 2 years, but for whatever reason, they can't be batch deleted by the batch deletion tool. And I do the exact same thing with these as I run this report. I batch modify them, and I change them to can't be deleted because fines, fees, overdues, etc. And so then they can run that same report, but then they can choose the different attribute, and so they can know exactly which patrons are fit into which attribute. And then the next one is, these are the patrons that have been expired for more than 3 years. And I always put a projected deletion date in the report. And it's just the projected deletion date is about 2 months from now. It's at least 2 months from now. It's on the 15th of the month, 2 months from now. And so I batch modify these so that they all say account expired, delete on 7/15. I'm actually going to make these
categories there.
Yes, there are. There's big authorized values set there. But then this way, if they want to run that report and they want to see who's going to be deleted, I set them all to April 15th because I've already done my April deletions. Oh, it hasn't finished processing yet. So if I reload, oh, I hope I changed them to the right batch. What did I change them all to? But you get the picture. I can run that report and see who meets that criteria. And then the final one is which are the patrons that are expired but can't be deleted. And then so then after I run that, once a month after the 15th of the month, I run my batch for April 15th to see all of the patrons system-wide that have that attribute on their account. And then I go in and I batch modify them all. And I actually, to make this easy on me, I created a button that says set for deletion. Now, one of the things that my libraries wanted is they wanted the ability to run a report that says how many people were deleted. And so that means I can't permanently delete these patrons.
Right.
But I also don't want their data in there. If they've been deleted from, if they've been expired for more than 3 years, I don't want all that confidential information about their name or their address or any of that stuff saved in the account. So I batch change all of their names to deleted. I remove their street number. I keep the city, state, and zip code, but I get rid of all the identifying information from their account. And I change their, well, the date isn't filling in right. I change this date to 01/01/1900, and then I save this all. Then I can go in and use the batch patron deletion, and anybody whose expiration date is before 01/31/1900, I can move those patrons to the trash, and all of their names, their addresses, all of that confidential information that I don't want to save gets removed from the account. But I can run reports now on how many patrons were deleted each month system-wide, and each library can know how many patrons were deleted that way. And so it's a more complicated process than what you're doing, but that's because I'm trying to satisfy all these libraries that they want to know how many patrons were deleted. They want to know when they're going to be deleted. They want to know a year in advance which patrons are going to be deleted. And so this takes care of all of those boxes for me. But it's a much more complicated process. And I do it, like I said, our policy says I do it at least twice a year. But I had that done in February. So once a month, I usually run these reports, and that way patrons are always, the staff at the libraries are always, they have the ability to find out what's going to happen with these patrons. So
it's a very involved process, and there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So
yeah,
I can see why it'd be more
it'd be a lot easier for me to do it your way.
I can see why there's a lot of hesitancy to it. I mean, if we took that on, I would be like, okay, am I doing this step right? Am I, you know, am I following the order just right? Because there's, you know, if I don't do it right, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that helps me is I set this group up specifically for this video, but one of the things I do is I've got all of those reports bookmarked in a tab, and all I have to do is click on open that tab, open that group of tabs, and Koha runs all the reports for me.
Mhm.
And so all I have to do is go through and remember, okay, part 1, these I need to change to, I mean, I actually say change these to account expired for more than 2 years. I've got all the instructions right there on the screen for me.
That's good.
And I usually run these 4 reports. I usually run them about once a week, but then once a month on sometime like the Monday after the 15th, I go in and I do the batch deletion. So,
you know, this is a good segue into some of the things that we run into with you know, why we do some of the things that we do, what are some of the, you know, the pitfalls, and, you know, what are some things that Koha could do better that are
right.
being discussed. You know, we talked about, you know, should things be moved to the trash or permanently deleted? There are caveats to that. You know, like I said, if you permanently delete, there is no, like you said, that there's no going back.
There's
but
nothing
even,
there. It just removes those rows from the table and it doesn't do anything with them.
right. But even if you move things to the trash, which just moves the
Right.
information from one table to another, you're breaking a ton of links, and restoring that information is crazy. And I can't do it. I have to ask Bywater in our case to do it, and they can't. I imagine, you know, they could pour through logs and try and restore every link. I don't know if they can technically restore every link that was broken.
And I'm not sure, when you delete a patron, when you permanently delete them, what happens to those account lines?
Right.
The account lines that are, if there are any account lines attached to the patron for previously paid fees, are those still in the account lines table, or is there part of the process, does that delete those account lines?
I would hope that, you know, those transactions are kept in some way, just anonymized, because, you know, if you're deleting patrons, but you need to hold on to your transactions for a completely separate a number of years, it's like that could cause some problems.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happens when you delete a patron. I don't know what happens to the account lines. But there are other things that are connected to patrons, like attributes are stored in a separate table. So when you delete a patron, is there still that attribute out there hanging around with that patron ID number on it,
Right.
to a patron ID that doesn't exist anymore? There are several things that are connected to patrons, and, you know, it's a relational database. So there are several things that are connected to the patron record. And once you permanently remove that from that patron record from the table, what happens to all of those linked tables?
Right. And, you know, there are some safeguards that Koha does. Like I said, there's this list of criteria that these accounts have to meet before they can even be deleted. But, you know, there are some things that you can specify in criteria as
right.
deleted. We specifically focus on the expiration. You run into issues if you go off of borrowed, because that patron could potentially be using your library and using your digital collection, which doesn't reflect on this borrowing aspect. And I'm not even sure exactly how they determine borrowing, except through patron history or how that is. And it depends on if you're retaining any of that information.
Well, and one thing I'm not sure about, because I've never used it, is can you use multiple of these criteria?
Oh yeah, that's why they're all here. So you can,
yeah, that's what I thought. So
multiple things. but yeah, the borrowing could be a dangerous tool to use, depending on what's being stored in your system and what it's referring to determine that borrow. I mean, is it going off of old issues and finding that borrower number in there, or is it going off of the patron history if that's being retained? That's, this is kind of mysterious in itself. I mean, I guess
It's not clear
does
from just what's on the screen here.
yeah, I'm wondering if the instructions itself specifies that.
There isn't a subheading for,
Yeah,
so you've got to scroll, you've got to find you've got to find the
what
batch.
was that term? Not borrowed since. Where is that?
It's a pop-up.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so yeah, there isn't a lot of information. Really isn't. So, that's a little concerning. This is where we could use a little bit of more documentation on
Yeah.
that particular choice. The expiration is pretty straightforward. Who have not been connected since. Now, what determines when they've been connected? Because does that mean that they've been in the library and checked out, or does that mean that they've connected to your digital resources? Is SIP being identified somewhere? I know that we recently had some bugs that have been worked on, and I don't know the specific status on those bugs. But I mean, like, if somebody's only using your Overdrive account, they're only doing digital checkouts, is that being recorded? Or, if they're using a resource that only is, are they just coming into the library and using your computers, which just authenticates through SIP? Is that being recorded as showing a connection? So I know that there's been some work done on that. I don't know if it's complete yet.
Yeah, I think that connects to the database field borrowers.last seen. But I don't know what drives updating borrowers last seen.
Yeah,
I don't know all the possibilities of what could update borrowers last seen.
Again, let's see here. Been connected since. If I went and searched for that, see, I'm not even getting a hit on that on this page.
Yeah, it might be that whole section of the manual hasn't been updated since some of these options were added.
So there's little information here, and what would be helpful on these tools is at least, okay, what constitutes as a connection in Koha. I would like that defined in the manual, but I would also like, if it's connected with a particular preference, because I know that they were talking about a preference in some of the bugs, where you can define what constitutes a connection. If there is a preference that this relies on, point me to that preference, give me a link to that, so that I can go see what those settings are. So there is some work that needs to be done on this tool still, to instill a little bit more confidence for me. I do know that, here's an example of a bug where, they were talking about tracking last patron activity for SIP, track both patron status and patron information requests. So, it's still a topic that is dealt with. This one has been completed, it looks like, push to main. But there are several of these in there. I don't know if they're all complete, but the one I was trying to find that bug earlier that I specifically was talking about, where you could select what constitutes use for tracking purposes. I don't know if that's been finished. I couldn't find that one, but so if somebody finds it, please put it in a comment. But the other aspect of deleting and maintaining these records is the question of, is somebody going to need this information restored at some point? Koha
Right.
is
Currently,
go ahead.
moving them to where it says move them to the trash, what it really means is move this line out of borrowers and into deleted borrowers.
Yes.
From the database. And that's where this other bug that you've got pulled up.
Yeah. And so, maintaining these tables creates a lot of hesitancy because there isn't any staff ability to undo these things. You're relying on support vendors or IT to fix these things if you do it. So there is no safety buffer with this. And here's a bug. It is 20271, where unfortunately it's still in discussion. This was started back in 2018.
Right.
And here we are 6 years later in discussion. And the idea of this bug, and there are other related bugs here, is that I'm gonna have to go look to see if maybe this is more of an omnibus at this point. It doesn't say it in the title, but the idea of this is, okay, we move away from moving the things that we would delete into separate tables. We flag them instead, so they stay where they are. They retain their links. So if we were to go into an item and say, okay, well, who checked this out? That link isn't gone if that patron is deleted. So if we're retaining certain pieces of information, we'll still have that, or an accounts line, it's not broken from the item or from the patron, that type of thing. So the idea is that we move away from a deleted table where links get broken, and we move to a more of a flagging system where it has the ability, you can mark something as deleted, you can see when it was deleted, and it's not really gone, it's just not coming up in your, like if you deleted a patron, it doesn't come up in your patron searches. So it doesn't constitute as an active or an active record. So there's you have that buffer, you're not breaking links, but it also would give us the ability to say, oh, I did not mean to delete that, or that one shouldn't have been deleted. It would give our developers a way to introduce the possibility of undos, finding deleted records and then saying, oh, let's undo that deletion.
Right.
Basically getting rid of the flag, and then it works just as normal. We don't have to have data specialists go back in, restore move rows of data from one table to another and restore links, which would be huge. But the thing that is, I think, causing the delays in this and throwing this into a discussion is the undertaking that they're, I think our developers are just looking at this and saying this is an overwhelming task, a daunting task.
Right.
And you and I talked
well, and I was also looking here, one of the other things that I see come up when you read down through this bug is funding. Yes.
And you and I talked about this a little bit before recording and thought, you had the comment, well, what if they could add that column, call it deleted, and kind of put this in front of the whole mechanism of moving things to the deleted table, so that they wouldn't have to trade one for the other and make this huge
I think
to work, but rather let's add this column to this patron or table or this item table, and then tell it what to do with that. When if you mark this, you can mark the item deleted, or however you want to do that in the system. Maybe a new category, flag the item deleted.
Right. I think it'd be as simple as just a column called deleted and then a yes, no, a 0 or a 1 in that column. And
I would prefer a date, because
a date would be good. Yes.
Yeah, because it would be nice to be able to see when that was deleted. But
right. I guess you're almost going to need to have something in there that says when it was deleted. If you in the future want to remove the deleted lines from the database based on some kind of cron.
And so,
but yeah,
you could do that, and then then in your deletion process, at some point you could say, okay, those things that have been flagged deleted, move them to the deleted table. So it adds another layer. But the nice thing about that is it would give us the flexibility of undeleting.
Right. And well, it would also, I think of it as like a first step towards moving towards where we, it's all the tables in Koha. There's like deleted items, there's deleted biblio, there's deleted patrons, deleted biblio items. There's a bunch of tables in Koha that start with deleted. And if the first step was to just not worry about what has to happen to make those tables go away, but first add the deleted column in the tables that have a corresponding deleted table. And because I think that's when I look at this, one of the things I see is like the idea of changing that much of the infrastructure at once is complicated. So why start with changing the complicated part? Why not start with the easy part and then work from there? So, but I haven't read this bug in a long time. So there might be other considerations that I'm not thinking of just looking at it right now.
Yeah. If I was going to say, this needs to move forward, I would suggest, your idea, do this part, add this part in it, adding another table column, is easy enough. And then giving it some functionality, but also, do it on something that wouldn't be as highly impacted. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't start off on this process. Get your model set up on something, I don't know, a list, lists, something that might not even have deletion capabilities yet. But, give yourself something small to set up a test environment and figure out those parameters, and then say, okay, well, this is something that we can replicate, and then slowly move anything that we want to delete in Koha into that pattern, so that okay, we're going to add that column, and these mechanisms are in place. So if you mark it deleted, it's actually just there. It's just hidden, kind of thing. And it's a precursor to what's already in place for deletion. Then at some point, once that's all done, once we've moved over to that model, then we could start looking at, okay, let's get rid of these deleted tables. Let's just eliminate that process of that. If it's been marked deleted, you could go to moving it to the tables, but then why do that? Why have that step in there once we've gone to that model? Why not remove that particular step and say, okay, well, once it's been flagged deleted for X amount of time, let's just go ahead and purge it.
Clear it from the system.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we can move this bug from in discussion to some small manageable steps, proof of concept kind of thing with some tables, and build a model that we can work off of, and then slowly get that incorporated into our existing deletion routines, and then look at removing those deleted tables.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun discussion.
Yeah. Deletion
I'm
is
sure when I play
scary.
this, when this comes out, I'm going to have to turn it on for my wife and kids and just see how quickly they leave the room. My kids hate our videos. It's like, oh God.
Thank you. I feel the love.
It's like, oh God, I can't believe you're going to talk about Koha. You talk about Koha enough at home that we have to watch a video on it. So,
Well, don't ask me about your kids. I'm just- No, I love your family. I haven't had the opportunity to meet your kids, but I have met your wife. So
yeah,
I can't say anything bad about her.
no, neither can I.
I hope. All right, well, we've completely gone off the grid here. I think it's time to end. So
All right.
I want to thank everybody for joining us, and hopefully in 2 weeks we can talk about something other than families.
Yep, we'll see you all next time.